Now, one of the most basic ways in which somebody might object to the Rawlsian theory of justice is that, well, it looks like the free market system protects one's right to self determination, right to autonomy. And that seems to be a central principle in medical ethics. This is because, on a libertarian view of justice, one's rights are based upon one's freedoms rather than the kind of entitlement rights that are sometimes associated with a Rawlsian theory of justice. On this type of objection, what we're really sort of doing is look into what sort of medical principles do we find to be most important. So if you think that something like autonomy is the most important medical principle, then you might think that a libertarian view of justice is a better way to go because it does a better job of protecting one's right to autonomy. Now, it looks like the notion of making money off of people that are suffering seems to violate both the bioethical principle of beneficence, of compassion, as well as non-maleficence, of do no harm. And so if you think that one of the most important moral features of any theory of justice that we should be concerned with is to minimize suffering and maximize pleasure or happiness, insofar as you think that beneficence and non-maleficence are really basic or fundamental, well, then the notion of having insurance plans that are making money off of the backs of people suffering, that seems to be really morally problematic. So again, what view of justice you think is the correct view might really be crucially tied to what bioethical principle or medical ethical principle you find to be the most fundamental or most important. Maybe that's autonomy, or maybe that's non-maleficence, or maybe it's somewhere in between. But these are the kind of considerations that we have to keep in mind. Now, another sort of objection that someone might have for a Rawlsian theory of justice is the point that on Rawls's theory of justice, the only considerations that really seem relevant are those events that happen in the future. We're trying to create an ideal society, one that does the best job of taking care of the most people. And that seems to be a view that's focused on future events. But someone might object saying that the past events, what you've done in the past, is just as relevant, if not even more so in some situations. So why is this distinction between the future events and past events? Why is that an important distinction to keep in mind? If you think about owning property, owning certain resources, or owning certain wealth as being the product of something that you've done in the past, well, then the past events seem to be pretty relevant. For example, the labor that you spend in the past seem to count towards your current economic situation. So if I spend 4, 5, 6, 7 years working to become a professor of philosophy, and then I'm able to go and get a good job teaching philosophy, and I'm able to make a good amount of money, which I hope that one day will happen. Well, that kind of income, that kind of wealth is all based upon what I did in the past. And so it seems fairly important. Now, Robert Nozick actually had a very interesting objection to Rawls's theory that is sometimes called the Wilt-Chamberlain argument, or the Wilt-Chamberlain objection. And the way that this objection runs is something like this. Wilt Chamberlain, who was a really famous basketball player a long time ago, let's say that he decided to put a collection of, I don't know, let's say that it was a dollar collection at the doors of the arena where he was playing. So in addition to the tickets that people had to buy in order to go watch the game, they also had to pay $1 to watch Wilt Chamberlain play. And this was because he was such a great, phenomenal player, and everybody really loved him, that everybody was willing to pay that extra dollar just to see him play. Now, on a Rawlsian theory of justice, it looks like the government would be in a situation where they could come and they could redistribute that $1 that everybody paid in order to see Wilt Chamberlain play in a way that would be fairest for everybody in the society. But that seems to be very paternalistic. The idea that two rational agents can agree to give $1 in order to see somebody play basketball, that seems to really embrace this notion of autonomy. We have a right to self-determination, to the right to do what we want with our money, let's say. If the government comes in and says, no, we know what's best for society, and we know that taking a portion of that dollar that you spent and redistributing it in order to help people out, we know that that's going to be better. Well, that seems to violate one's right to autonomy. That seems to suggest that two rational adults cannot come together and make this contract, this agreement. I'm going to pay an extra $1 to see Wilt Chamberlain play basketball. So that's just a kind of objection from paternalism. And if you agree with Mill's harm principle, recall that it says the only real justification of a violation of one's autonomy is when one's autonomous choice might hurt someone else or harm someone else. This does not seem to be a justified violation of one's autonomy. Two people can make the decision to pay an extra dollar to see the other person play, right? So that kind of paternalism, according to Nozick, with this Will Chamberlain objection, seems to undermine a Rawlsian theory of justice. But again, I want to come back to this point that what you have to say about this, what your response might be, really largely depends upon what bioethical or medical ethical principles you happen to think take priority over others. And I'm bringing it up again because this is going to be a reoccurring theme that we are going to have to think about as we proceed through this course.